To the fathers and all the men who care for us. To the grandfathers, the spiritual fathers, and the father figures. To the foster dads, the single dads, and the stepdads. To the mentors, friends, guardians, and guides. To those who loved us, taught us, and showed us the way. To those who carried us, held our hand, and watched us grow. To those who experienced blessing this year, and to those who went through loss. To the heroic men all around us, we want to say, thank you. Thank you for your courage, your kindness, and your faith in God. Thank you for shaping us, coaching us, and walking with us through life. Thank you for showing us what it looks like to love and follow Jesus. Thank you for your prayers, your wisdom, and for never giving up on us. Thank you for boldly stepping into this high and holy calling, for the long nights and the short years and the incredible joy. Whether this is a day of reflection, rejoicing, or remembering, we acknowledge you, we honor you, and we thank you today. Happy Father's Day.
Well, today is Father's Day, and the commemoration of this special day began back in 1910 in Spokane, Washington. Necktie and shirt manufacturers have rejoiced ever since. And then a few years later, as the celebration began to catch on, a group in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania declared the dandelion the official Father's Day flower because, they said, the more it's trampled on, the better it grows. Something that Irma Bombeck wrote seems to express the sentiments of Father's Day better than most. Here's just an excerpt of what she wrote. She said, "When I was a little girl, a father was like the light in the refrigerator. Every house had one, but no one really knew what either one of them did once the door was shut. My dad left the house every morning and always seemed glad to see everyone again at night. He opened the jars of pickles when no one else could. He was the only one in the house who wasn't afraid to go into the basement alone. He kept busy enough. He set mouse traps. He oiled my roller skates and they went faster. When I got my bike, he ran alongside me for at least 1,000 miles until I got the hang of it. He signed all of my report cards. He took a lot of pictures, but he was never in them. I was afraid of everyone else's father, but not my own. Once I made him some tea. It was only sugar water, but he sat in a small chair and he said that it was delicious. He looked very uncomfortable. Once I went fishing with him. I threw rocks into the water and he threatened to throw me in after them. I wasn't sure he wouldn't, so I looked him in the eye for a long time. I finally decided he was bluffing, and so I threw in one more. He wouldn't have been a very good poker player. Whenever I played house, the mother doll had a lot to do. But I never knew what to do with the father doll, so I had him say, "I'm going off to work now," and just threw him under the bed. When I was 9 years old, my father didn't get up one morning and go to work. He went to the hospital and died the next day. A lot of people came bringing all kinds of good food and cakes. We had never had so much company at one time before. I went to my room and I felt under the bed for the father doll. And when I found it, I dusted him off and put him on my bed. I never knew that his leaving would hurt so much. It still does. Well, today we're taking the kind of the father doll out from under the bed, and We're honoring the dandelions and refrigerator lights of society. And in doing that, we want to talk about a stepdad who was given the tremendous responsibility of raising God's son. His name, as you know, was Joseph, the husband of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And so go back in time with me as we consider his commitment, his concern, and his faithfulness. The first part of Joseph's story is one of commitment and happy expectations. Matthew chapter 1, beginning with verse 18, reads this way. It begins with these words. It says, "This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph." Now we need to understand that a Jewish marriage consisted of 3 stages. The first stage is the engagement. And usually that was arranged by their parents. I mean, parents would arrange the engagement without the young people even being involved. One example of that in the Old Testament was when Abraham sent his servant back to his home country to find a wife for his son Isaac. The servant found Rebekah and brought her back. But Isaac had never seen her before. Then she became his wife. The second stage of a Jewish marriage was the betrothal. And during this time, the young couple agreed to the marriage. The groom signed a document declaring his responsibilities to her, and they were considered husband and wife, but they didn't live together yet. Betrothal usually lasted about 1 year. It was a time for the groom to prepare the place where they would live. It was a time of building a relationship, of coming to know one another, of planning and dreaming and happy expectations. However, all of this suddenly ended in shock and disappointment for Joseph, because verse 18 goes on to say, "But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant." Now, the Bible doesn't tell us when Joseph was told or who told him. Maybe Mary told him. Maybe she said something like, "Joseph, I have the most wonderful news. I'm going to have a baby, and not just any baby. This is the Messiah, the one our people have been waiting for and praying for so many years. An angel told me." I asked the angel, "How could this possibly be? Because I've never slept with a man." And the angel told me, "That which is conceived in you is of the Holy Spirit." It's a miracle, Joseph. Isn't it wonderful? Aren't you happy? But Joseph wasn't happy. I mean, how could he believe such a story? And Joseph must have felt that Mary had betrayed him. But notice, even in this stage of his disappointment, Joseph still loved Mary. Matthew 1:19 says, "Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly." You see, the law said that Joseph could have taken her out to the city gate, and all the people there would have taken rocks and stoned her to death. And then Joseph's name would have been cleansed and his reputation restored. But Joseph decided not to do that. He decided not to disgrace her, but rather to divorce her discreetly, quietly, so that she could start her life over again. And he could start his life over again as well. That is when the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, telling Joseph what had happened, that the Holy Spirit had caused Mary to conceive a child that would be God's only son. And God had a request of Joseph. Would Joseph be a father, a stepdad? Would Joseph raise God's son? Well, Joseph had to decide. He had to make a commitment about a child who didn't belong to him. He had to make a commitment to a marriage that would be held up to scorn and gossip. But Joseph said that he would. And so Joseph took Mary to be his wife. Barbara Heinrich wrote a book in which she said, "Yesterday's man was a husband and a father and the family breadwinner. Today's man is a conspicuous consumer and is adept at dodging commitment." That's so true, I think, in so many ways. But Joseph didn't dodge his commitment. Joseph accepted the responsibility that God asked him to take. It was Joseph who put his wife on the donkey and began the long trip to Bethlehem. It was Joseph who found a place in which Mary could give birth. It was Joseph who helped her through birth. It was Joseph who first saw the Son of God and then held in his hands God's only Son. Joseph had made a commitment, but he didn't realize what all that commitment entailed. He didn't realize that he would have to serve as a midwife to help deliver God's only Son. But he had promised, and he didn't dodge his commitment. Joseph kept his word. You know, every so often we have the privilege of seeing parents presenting their new baby to the congregation. And we challenge those parents to be faithful as Christian parents, to be examples to their child. And we also pray for them, asking God to help them raise their child in the love and nurture of the Lord. And we do this because we're concerned about them and their family. Well, Joseph was also concerned. He was used to living in Nazareth, but now he was in Bethlehem. Somehow he had to support his wife and child. And so here was Joseph in Bethlehem trying to get carpentry work, concerned about being able to provide for God's very Son to take care of him. You know, Jesus was less than 2 years old when wise men from the east came and brought exotic gifts. At that time, Joseph is warned to flee from Herod's murderous intent to kill Jesus. And so Joseph uproots his family and flees to Egypt. Later, he uproots them again and he takes them to Nazareth. And as you know, Mary and Joseph had several children after that. And every year, along with many others from Nazareth, they would take their family to Jerusalem for the Passover feast. And so we can understand what happened when Jesus was 12 years of age. They worshiped in Jerusalem as they always did, and then they began their journey home once again. But that evening, as all of those who were traveling together stopped to rest for the night, Joseph maybe asked Mary, hey, Mary, where is Jesus anyhow? And Mary answers, well, I thought he was with you. No, Joseph says, he isn't with me. Where is he? And they frantically searched throughout the whole company, but Jesus was nowhere to be found. And so they rushed back to Jerusalem and began looking up and down the streets, but they can't find him anywhere. And finally, they go to the temple. And they notice a meeting taking place there in the temple. Sadducees and Pharisees are sitting around and they're nodding their bearded heads and they're looking intently at the speaker. And who is the speaker? It's Jesus, this 12-year-old boy. And Mary rushes up to him, and in front of this gathering of spiritual leaders, Mary says, Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you. And Jesus says something that Joseph would never forget. He says, well, why are you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? And right then, Joseph realized that Jesus had just one mother, but that he had two fathers. And it was Joseph's responsibility to turn loose of him and let Jesus be about what God had sent him to do. God had given him Jesus on loan. Joseph was simply a steward, a manager to help Jesus to develop and to grow. And so Joseph probably made some decisions on that long road back to Nazareth. I mean, he would do the very best he could to help Jesus be about his Father's business, to help Jesus to be the person that God wanted him to be. Joseph was faithful. But Joseph's problem was that he was just a carpenter. Tekton is the Greek word that is used, a carpenter. William Barclay says that in ancient days, a tekton was a man who probably had just two chisels, a hammer, a saw, and a square. But with just those few tools, he could make a chair or a table or a bridge or even a whole house. He wasn't just a workman, he was a craftsman, a carpenter. It's so obvious that Joseph had an impact on Jesus. In Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he talked about a fellow who had some sawdust in his eye. He talked about two men, two carpenters who built houses. And he said one was wise and one was foolish. Toward the end of Jesus' ministry, when he was trying to communicate to the disciples the importance of finishing what you start, he told of a man who wanted to build a tower, but who first went out and got all the materials to make sure he could finish what he started. Joseph didn't teach Jesus about aristocracy. He didn't teach him about speech making, but by his example, he taught him to finish what you start and how to handle disgruntled customers. He taught him to pay his bills. He taught him to treat his mother with respect. He taught him to take care of his younger brothers and sisters. Joseph didn't know that sometime before the beginning of Jesus' ministry, that God was going to call him home and leave his family fatherless. And that the boy he trained, the boy he worked with, sawed lumber with, chiseled wood with, would take his place and become a father to his younger brothers and sisters. Joseph had no idea that the work that God had called his son to do was the work of a carpenter, and that when Jesus was 33 years old, he would construct a bridge that would span eternity. Joseph had no idea that one day a carpenter's product, a wooden cross, would be the greatest monument that this world has ever known. All Joseph did was to be a stepdad to Jesus. All Joseph did was to keep the commitment that he had made to God. All Joseph did was to take a few tools and help to mold Jesus, the Son of God. I came across an interesting poem this last week. The poem was entitled, "A Father's Love." And it goes like this. We hear about a mother's love in story and in song, how staunch it is through trial and storm, how tender and strong, how sweet and pure and beautiful, and every word is true. But what about a father's love? That claims some notice too. A father delves the deepest mine and climbs the girders high. He swings upon the scaffolding between the earth and sky. It's father who bends his aching back and bows his graying head to bear the burdens of the day and earn the children's bread. For both must work and both must plant and do an equal share to rear the little ones the Lord has entrusted to their care. All honor to the mother's love, the universe it fills. But when you praise it, don't forget that Father pays the bills. And so I would say to all you dandelions, to all you refrigerator lights, to all of you father dolls that have been thrown under the bed, this is your day. You might feel inadequate for the tasks that God has called you to do, but just like Joseph, you must make a commitment. Like Joseph, you must be concerned, not just for the physical well-being of your family, but for their spiritual well-being too. And you must understand that you are a steward, a manager, and God has given you just a little while with your children. And so you've got to consecrate yourself to do your best in the job that God has called you to be, a father.